meeting tonight for the Effingham County Board of Commissioners. Our first time as vice chair, so these were with me and maybe a little slower, but got enough competent people around me that I think I can get through it. Hopefully, even an attorney to keep me out of trouble. So we'll move on. But it is now 5:05 p.m. on February 16th. And I guess I'd like to ask everybody to rise for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge of allegiance.
Please bow your heads. Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to be able to gather here this evening. Please help us to do your will. Definitely thank you for the sunshine today. It's been some rough weather here lately. We pray that you are with the folks up north and out west that are dealing with all the snowstorms. Hope you try to keep them safe. And dear Lord, please help us to remember all of your many blessings that you bestow upon us. And please be with our world leaders, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the agenda is a consideration for resolution to approve the agenda of any corrections or additions.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, and board members, if you will reference page 2 of your agenda, we have an addition that we're calling number 1A. You will hear the audit tonight. After hearing the audit, if you choose to do so, you will need to approve submission to the state of Georgia for the audit. So that has been added. In addition, under planning board items, that to tell you. Just a second. So it's item number 12 and number 13 for Freddie Mitchell. And also items number 18, 19, and 20 we will need to table as well. Item number 12 and 13, the request has been to table this item until the March 16th meeting. Items number 18, 19, and 20 will be postponed until the 3rd.
Which one?
The 3rd.
The third.
Just to clarify why, this particular item is obtaining the property that joins my personal property, and I'll have to recuse myself from moving on forward.
That's item number 18,
Yeah, just
20,
that.
18, 19, and 20.
18, 19, 20. Okay.
And those are your changes, sir.
With those changes, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the said changes.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rhodes for the second by Commissioner Roper. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And we have an agenda. Next up, we have the minutes. So consideration to approve the February 2nd, 2021 regular commission meeting minutes. Everything look good on those? Who was here? Is everyone here?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those no. And it carries. We are good with the minutes. So we need to recognize it. We need to recognize that Commissioner Floyd is not here and Chairman Corbett is not here with us tonight. Next we're on with item 6 is the public comments. I'd like to welcome the public tonight. I would like to keep your comments related to items on the agenda, if you will, please. And nothing else, and please keep any comments, if you can, 5 minutes or less, to allow everyone who wants to speak tonight a chance to do so. With that, we'll move on to our consent agenda. We have consideration to approve to ratify the physical agent designation and acceptance agreement for Family Connections. Item 2 is consideration to approve to continue the probation services agreement with the State Court of Effingham County. Item 3 is consideration to approve to continue the probation services agreement with the Superior Court of Effingham County. And item 4, consideration to approve to continue a service agreement with DocuQuest Service for a copier which is housed in the Tax Commissioner's office. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve as read.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. All those no. And we have a consent agenda approved. Next item is item 9 for old business. Consideration to approve the second reading to amend Chapter 10, Animals, Section 10.1, 10.4, 1071, 1072, and 10.114 of the Effingham County Code of Ordinances. Do I have a motion to approve the first reading?
Second.
Oh, sorry, second reading.
Make a motion to approve the second reading.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those no. And the second reading is approved. And we are on new business. Number 10. And the first item of new business is an audit. It's a presentation by Lemire, Deal, and Proctor, the 2020 audit.
Good evening, Christy Carpenter, Finance Director. As you know, we have wrapped up our audit, and the presentation will be made by Kay Proctor, who's a member of the auditing team.
Good evening, everybody. I think in your packets you had a copy of a slideshow that Christy put together. The Finance Department elected to just give you those slides this year for your review and asked that I go over the financial statements as part of my audit presentation instead of just going over the findings. That'll give you two different perspectives. It'll give you what the Finance Department's looking at, and it'll give it to you from our perspective as well. When I go over the audit report, I tend to focus a lot on the first two statements, which were the government-wide statements. That's going to look at your government as a whole on an accrual basis. So I'm going to spend most of my time there, and then I'll just point out a few other things in the financial statements to note that are probably also in your slides as well. So as always, thank you guys for the opportunity. Thank you, Mark and Christy. I think it gets a little cleaner and a little easier every year. You guys work very well together, and we appreciate the order in which you guys give us all of the work papers and everything. Okay, your audit report, you should all have a copy. The report is on page 3, and it is an unmodified opinion, meaning that we feel that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with GAAP. I've got to swap my stuff around here so I can swap my pages. So we'll just dig right in. The management discussion and analysis starts on page 5. And I'm not going to go over anything in there in detail. That management discussion and analysis is put together by the Finance Department using the audited financial statements. So there's some good color, some background, maybe some explanations of some of the numbers that I would encourage you to look over. But we're going to just start on page 14, which is the government-wide statement of net position. I'm only going to focus on the primary government, which is the first 3 columns. You'll see you have your governmental activities, your business type activities, and then you'll have your total column, which is the total of all of your assets and liabilities and net position for Effingham County as a whole. The component units, you'll see the Hospital Authority and the Board of Health are presented here, but for the purpose of this presentation, I won't look at those numbers. So the first thing I want to point out is under your total assets, the first subtotal you're going to have are total assets. Total assets were total current assets Total current assets were $57,644,000 approximately. That's a $10.5 million increase in your current assets from the prior year, or 22%. And that increase is almost entirely in cash. Your cash increased by approximately $10 million last year to 17.2 this year. It was right at $7 million last year. So that's where your increase in current assets is coming from. If you look down, the next subtotal you're going to see in that total column is going to be your total capital assets, $130,549,000. That increased by approximately $4 million from the prior year, or 3%. The biggest part of this increase is going to be the new gym construction last year was a big part of it. Also, the purchase of the administrative building. There were 2 buildings that were purchased from a bank as well during the last fiscal year. So that's going to be a large part of that increase in your capital assets. Total assets were at $188 million. You'll see in the middle of the page. And then coming down, you're going to see your liabilities section. Under your liabilities for the government as a whole, you'll see a total in current liabilities of $10,878,000. That number stayed fairly consistent. It barely changed from the prior year. It changed by 2% from the prior year. So not much change in your current liabilities. When you come down to your long-term liabilities, that's what you don't see on your fund level financial statements that we'll see later, are your long-term liabilities and your current assets, or your capital assets. But you'll see your total long-term liabilities, your bonds payable, notes payable, capital leases, $32,026,000 approximately. That is an increase of $2,348,000 from the prior year. And that increase, of course, there were payments made on existing debt and capital leases, but you also had a new bond last year, $5 million for the construction of the new gym. So that's going to be where your increase in liabilities is coming from. Total liabilities were $42,904,000. So you have your assets, what you have, less what you owe. Your liabilities are going to come down to what you really have, which is your net position. So your net position, you'll see your assets minus your liabilities. In total, at the bottom of that third column, is $145,288,000. And that is, of course, an increase from the prior year of approximately $12 million, or 9%. I wanted to point out in this number, this $145 million, if you look up a little bit, you'll see that $107,369,000 is invested in your capital assets. That's your depreciable assets, the $130 million that we talked about earlier, less all of the related debt. So that net position, $107 million, is tied up in fixed assets. You've got some that's restricted, say your spliced money, maybe some other special revenue funds and so forth for capital projects. You've got your service delivery to unincorporated areas. That special revenue fund has $5 million. You've got some other restrictions. Basically, that's mostly just your other small special revenue funds. So you come down to what's really unrestricted out of that $145 million is $14,731,000. And that's 10% of your total net position. If you'll look at page 15, I don't think I've ever went over this statement in detail with this group because the finance department always does their slideshow. But when I start on this statement, I always feel like I have to apologize for the fact that it's so hard to read. You have to read this statement from the left to the right and then down for it to make any sense. Again, it also includes your component units, and we're going to focus on just the primary government. So if you will look in the first column, you'll see your expenses. Towards the bottom of that column, you'll see your total expenses for the primary government were $62,775,000. Of that, $53,813,000 were your governmental activities. And then you have your business type activities, your water and sewer, your wastewater treatment plant, sanitation. Those expenses were $8,962,000. That is an increase from the prior year. In the prior year, your total government-wide expenses were $58,094,000. So it's a pretty big increase, but that increase was kind of consistent across the board. And you'll see that revenues were also up. So the increases made sense. Really and truly, every category was up with the exception of the wastewater treatment plant, and under your governmental activities, health and welfare, which would be things like the Senior Citizen Center and the Health Department funding. The largest increase, of course, is going to be in public safety, and that's usually the case, and that was a 9% increase from the prior year under the public safety category, and that's going to include everything from EMS to the Sheriff's Department, so forth and so on. Okay, so as we go across, we're going to see all of our revenues. Across, first you're going to have a column that's going to have your fines and your fees and your charges for services. Then we're going to have operating grants, capital grants, and then we're going to come down, we're going to have a net, and then after the net, it's going to show the amount that was funded by property taxes and other general revenues. So you'll see your total fines, fees, and charges for services across the whole government, $20,248,000. You have operating grants and contributions in a total, all under governmental activities, of $1,359,000. And that number was up by approximately just a little over $270,000 last year. Some of that's going to be funding for the juvenile court, which was a new department in the last fiscal year. There's also, we have to record small plans, basically your constitutional officers. They are eligible to participate in these statewide retirement plans, and we have to record that as revenue and expense within these financial statements. So there was an increase in some of that as well last year. Capital grants and contributions, that's going to be your grants and your contributions that are related to capital. So anything that's under the $834,000 and the $1.4 million underneath your governmental business type activities, that's going to be your cost recovery fees. The biggest component of the $3,386,000 under the governmental activities is going to be DOT funding for road projects. And that amount was receivable and deemed collectible at the end of last year, although none of it had been received at this point. So if you look across, you're going to see that under governmental activities, you had $36,515,000 excess in expenses over these revenues. And that amount was funded by your general revenues, which you'll see down towards the bottom, $47,439,000. And after transfers to your business type activities, you're going to see that your total net position changed in your governmental activities by $9.5 million. And then across on your business type activities, you had an increase in net position of $2.5 million, and that makes up your total $12 million increase. I did want to point out property taxes increased. Taxes increased pretty significantly in the prior year. Property taxes increased in total by approximately $4.9 million. Property general revenues increased by $5 million. The $47 million increased by approximately $5 million last year. Property taxes increased by approximately $2.7 million or 12% last year. So that's where a lot of that increase is coming from. And then also sales tax increased pretty significantly last year. Sales tax went up by about 9% from the prior year. And your other taxes, just your other miscellaneous taxes, went up by about $400,000 last year. Any questions on those pages before we move on? A few things to point out. If you go to the next page, page 16, you're going to see your balance sheet for your governmental funds. And again, this looks a little different than your statement of net position that we saw, because this is not done on full accrual basis. This doesn't include your capital assets. It does not include your long-term debt. But I did want to talk a little bit about the fund balance on here. So you'll see on a fund level, which is basically your current assets less your current liabilities, you have a total in assets of and I'm just going to focus on the general fund really, $19,057,000. less your liabilities and your deferred inflows, you come down and you have a total fund balance in the general fund of $16,257,000, which is a good fund balance, and it increased by $2.9 million from the prior year. What I wanted to point out on this, you did have some changes in your, basically your restricted and your assigned fund balances. Your economic stabilization amount went up from 4.2 to $6 million. And also, we're required to report any amounts of fund balance that are assigned to be used in next year's budget. We have to report that separately and outside of the assigned fund balance because that's spoken for to be used in next year. So you'll see that that amount, and that's actually the amount for the fiscal year 2021 budget, but the amount that we earmarked for next year's budget is $1,025,000. That was just over $200,000 or $233,000 was the exact amount in the prior year. So that's a significant change. So even though you had a $2.9 million increase in your fund balance, your unassigned fund balance actually went up very little. Let's see, your unassigned fund balance went up by about $227,000. So basically, and it's good, I mean, it's still a good strong fund balance and it remained consistent and you have your economic stabilization, but I did just want to point out of that 16 million, only 6.3 is unassigned. Okay. Just to point out on page 20, another statement that everybody usually likes to look at is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, budget versus actual for the general fund. I wanted to point out on here, and I think the finance department did a great job with making sure you had the amendments that you needed for things that changed, that went through the year. You have one item on page 21 under the expenditures that's over budget, and it's over budget by $2,500, and that's it. So in total, you had a positive variance and a really good job with managing that last year.
When you're speaking from year to year, is there a report that shows from one year to another, or is that something we do in-house?
That would be something that could perhaps be generated in-house from your system, but it's not something that's part of the annual audited financial statements. That's right. In some audits, it is, but the county's never elected to include the comparative statements in there.
It's good to see it from year to year.
Right.
Also, we'll talk about taxes just for a second.
Right.
We didn't raise any taxes. The excess revenue came from new buildings and appreciation in properties.
Right.
Physical taxes.
The thing is, these reports already have so much information in them. If you put too much, I'll completely lose y'all. Okay.
And one thing, now you said we had 14 million unrestricted in fund balance?
Well, that's net position, which is a little bit different because you're looking at things on an accrual basis, just like you would on your business's financial statements. Does that make sense?
It does.
That's not mine.
I'm just digging at our finance director.
Did I say fund balance instead of net position? Is that why you're
No,
looking at it?
I was just saying, okay, so we do have a little pot of money over there on the sides.
I gotcha.
I'm just digging at our finance director.
I gotcha. Accrual basis. Okay, just to point out, the statements for your proprietary funds, which are called your business type activities in the first two statements, start on page 23. And I'm not really going to point a lot out on that. I will direct you to page 24. And on page 24, that's going to be basically your income statement for each one of these business type activities or each of these proprietary funds. And you can see your operating income or operating loss and your other revenues and expenses and the total net change by fund on this statement. And I wanted to point that out. Really and truly right now, the only one that has an operating loss is going to be your wastewater treatment plant. The rest of them have operating income. Okay, the notes start on page 27. And I definitely will not read these in detail, but just to point out a few things. Let's see, the first thing I have to point out is on page 39. If you're interested, this is a detail of your interfund activity. It's got the receivable and payable funds, and also it's got a detail of transfers to and from other funds within the government. And you'll see that your transfers are primarily coming from the special tax district into these other special revenue funds. On page 40, you're going to see your capital asset notes, and that's going to give you a little more detail about the composition of your capital assets, or what we call sometimes fixed assets in the business world. It's going to show you your additions by category and also your depreciation. And that's listed separately for business type activities and government activities. So you'll see on page 41 a schedule of the changes for your enterprise funds or your business type activities. The debt notes start on page 42 with note 8 for capital leases. At the bottom of that page, you'll see your total lease liabilities by year. And then just kind of skipping over, on page 43, you'll see that second paragraph gives you a little bit of detail about that new $5 million bond. And then page 44 is going to give you the changes in long-term debt from the prior year. So you'll be able to see the total additions, and you'll also be able to see the pay downs in principal on other liabilities. Okay. For your review at a later time, the combining statements and also the budget versus actual statements for all of your non-major funds that are not in the front of the statement are included behind the notes starting on page 49. So if there's anything you have a particular question about or concern about, or if there's anything you just want to see a little more detail about, you'll find it in those pages. It would be hard to go through all of those in detail in this time without boring you to death. But if you do have any questions as you look after those, just let Christy know, and she can reach out to our office and we'll be glad to get you an answer to your questions. The SPLOS schedule is on page 75. This will have the total, original, and current estimated costs, the amount spent in the prior years and the current year. And the current year will tie to that financial statement. I wanted to point out, you'll see we are required on the schedule to report expenditures within this fund that were covered by proceeds from anything other than SPLOST. So you'll see you had intergovernmental revenue or grants from the DOT for $3 million. You had the use of bond proceeds, $2.2 million, and then a property tax millage for roads, streets, and bridges out of that fund for $689,000. The report on compliance and internal controls starts on page 76. And we did have a few, as we finished up the audit, we realized we had a few findings in here. They are not related to the county's office. They're related again to the tax commissioner's office. That office just really maybe needs some training and support related to their bookkeeping. There's some bookkeeping and bank reconciliation errors, and they're also, we don't feel like anything's being misappropriated, and we feel like everything that's coming in and being received is being paid to the right spot. But they are starting to get some excess funds in that account, and we need to make sure that that does not become a problem that goes from year to year to year, because it's the longer it goes, the harder it is to find. But they need to do some additional work to make sure they have all those funds accounted for and going to the right spot.
Didn't you mention something like that last year?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, and Christy and I have discussed it as well, and there are resources out there to help with that, and it's complicated. I mean, it really is, and the tax commissioner is the hardest of the constitutional officers. So, I get it, but we just want to make sure that this doesn't develop into a major issue.
Yes, ma'am.
And that concludes my report. Does anybody have any questions?
So no major findings, everything was as it should be.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Everything was in good condition, especially as far as the county's, central office is concerned. Just the issues with the.
Ms. Finance Director, congrats to you and your staff. Good job.
Thank you very much.
They do a great job.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
We'll be doing some light reading.
No
way to do it, right?
Well, again, if you have questions later, just reach out to finance and let them know, and we'll get together and get you an answer.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you all so much.
All right, so I guess with the changes tonight, the next thing would be 01A, the audit, and the consideration to approve the audit statements in the submitted state of Georgia. Questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the reports.
Second.
We have a motion to approve, Commissioner Deloach, a second by Commissioner Loper. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. And it carries. Moving on to item 2 in the new business. Consideration to approve updated purchase order 21-19-001 for the purchase of a new ambulance for the emergency medical services.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Allison Bruton, purchasing agent. In November of 2020, a PO was issued to Custom Truck and Body Works for the purchase of a new ambulance for EMS. It was determined that a few items were not included in the original bid listing, but needed to be included on the ambulance. So Custom Truck and Body did provide a follow-up quote for that, which would increase the total by $1,100. So it'll go from $166,522 to $167,622. Staff recommends alternative 1.
Questions or comments from the board?
Make motion to approve item number 1.
Second.
A motion to approve by Commissioner Loper, second by Commissioner Deloach. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And it carries. And number 3 is similar. Consideration to approve purchase order number 21-19-001-2 for the purchase of a new ambulance for emergency medical services.
Yes, sir. So based on the needs of EMS, the purchase of a second ambulance has been requested, and a budget amendment was approved in December to allocate that funding. Custom Truck and Body Works has stated that they will honor their original quote for the purchase of the second ambulance, which will be the updated quote of $167,000, I believe it was. Yeah, $167,622. So staff is recommending alternative 1.
Questions? Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve item number 1. Second.
It's a motion to approve by Commissioner Loper and a second by Commissioner Deloach. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And it carries.
Was that Deloach or Kiefer?
Ether.
Oh, was it? And item number 4, consideration to approve resolution number 021-003 to surplus 2 sheriff vehicles.
Yes, sir. So this resolution consists of 2 ECSO vehicles. They're requesting that these vehicles be donated to Savannah Technical College to be used as training vehicles for the students for their emergency vehicle operators class as part of their basic law enforcement certification program. And staff is recommending alternative 1.
Any idea of the value of these things?
I don't. I could try to find out for you if you'd like. I believe we donated 2 last year as well.
We did the county place. Questions from the board? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve alternative 1.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Deloach, a second by Commissioner Loper. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And then it carries. Allison, that's one.
This last one.
Consideration to approve to issue a contract to Lane Brothers Auctioneers, or Auctions, LLC for the 2021 surplus auction services.
Yes, sir. So last year, we actually sold just over $47,000 worth of vehicles and things at the surplus last year. This year's auction will be held on March 27th, 2021. Since no funding is required, staff is recommending alternative 1.
questions or comments?
Make a motion to approve alternative number one.
Second.
A motion to approve alternative 1 from Commissioner Kiefer, second by Commissioner Deloach. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And it carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have item number 6 with Kristen. It's consideration to approve to rescind the original contract and enter into a new service contract with C2I Control Instruments Incorporated for design build services for a supervisory control and data acquisition SCADA system upgrade for the wastewater treatment plant.
Chris Noxiger, EOM Operations. Originally, the project was estimated to be $150,000 that utilized bond funding for the SCADA system upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant. A contract was entered into with C2I in June. The original contract and phase 2 of the project totaled $45,061. What we found with trying to finalize the last final phase of the project, of this design build project, and the reason for rescinding the original and issuing a new was just a terminology issue with the original contract. The final phase is roughly $74,000. This will complete the final part of the SCADA upgrades and will come under budget. It will be $119,029. So in order to get the documentation correctly and finalize the project, we're asking to rescind the original and issue a new contract for all of the work total. So do you have any questions?
Thank you. Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approval to rescind the old original contract and vote okay on this alternate number 1.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Loper to approve and a second by Commissioner Deloach. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And it carries. Next item I have is a discussion item. It's recent. It's a discussion of the new ordinance, section 3.15C, agricultural business, to accommodate large-scale intensive uses for an AR1 district. We're going to table that, or?
No, but I can just bring up, since it's not up for a vote, I can simply just kind of bring it up what we're talking about and just say if you have any feedback, feel free to email. So everyone knows, this is based on a discussion we had at the retreat workshop on some items that traditionally get zoned industrial, but are traditionally located in rural areas. We've already temporarily put a fix on one of them simply because we frequently get requests for it, and that's the cell tower. Dirt mines is another one. We've had some requests with regards to landfill and looking at what our current zoning is on that. I feel we could take a better look at it to protect the county when it comes to those uses. Other ones are solar farms, gun ranges are uses we've discussed, and also livestock and poultry processing. Essentially, just so everyone knows, based on the feedback we received, those are uses that would traditionally be located in more rural areas, but they're more of a heavier type use. And the concern expressed by the board members was rezoning spots of land in rural Effingham County as commercial or industrial to accommodate these uses, and the potential that that could have of spreading to surrounding properties to get rezonings for them. So to keep them in the AR category, but have some very strict and heavy conditions dictated by the ordinance put on each individual one. And so the way we were looking at it is, right now you can have a business use in
in AR1, but it's limited. You have your kind of two categories right now, your home-based business, and then you have your rural business or rural neighborhood business. And both of them require you to live at the property, and they'll have some restrictions on them for you to operate there. We get those conditional use requests periodically in front of the board. These uses, however, traditionally would require that you actually reside at the locations. Cell tower is an example. You could have an AR1 property with no home on it, and that could have a cell tower located on it. Dirt mine is the same; it would be the same way. So our thought was that you create an additional category in addition to the home-based business or the rural neighborhood business, which is the rural commercial business, but you have that use is specifically restricted to certain uses, and each of those uses would have its own specific conditional requirements that need to be met. And so if you take those uses that I just mentioned, like a dirt mine, for example, the dirt mine we already have within our code. You have your EPD requirements on dirt mines, and then you have your if you recall, you all passed additional requirements that are part of our local ordinance that are required for dirt mines. So we basically place both of those conditional requirements in order to get an approval in a conditional approval in AR1 rural commercial business. Landfill's the same way. Rather than simply being a use by right, which is what it is right now in industrial, it would effectively make it a conditional, so it has to go in front of you for you. So anyone that has an industrial property right now, if they can get the approvals by EPD, could effectively have a landfill on it. But this would require conditional approval before anything goes in front of the board. And then that would essentially have both the EPD requirements to operate a landfill, and it would have the additional county requirements for operating a landfill. And we kind of took a stab at it from looking at some neighboring ordinances, requiring it to be on a state highway, minimum parcel size, and I can't quite remember some of the other items that we put on there, just to add some additional restrictions to this above and beyond what the state might have, just to provide the county more protection. As you go down the list, they become a little bit more complicated, but our thought was, we start with the ones that are already regulated by either county ordinance or EPD. And I know gun ranges and Commissioner Floyd has expressed interest on this, is that we come up with conditions that you can actually operate a gun range. That's a little trickier and more complicated because there aren't any state requirements like on a landfill or a cell tower or dirt mine that exist on that. So we have to basically come up with our own on that. But traditionally, you're not going to put them on a B property because they're generally smaller. They'd be on a larger type property in a rural area. And so if they were to occur, we want to make sure we have the protections on it. So with all of that, I wanted to let you all know how we took the direction, from you all, what direction we're going in on coming up with some sort of finished product for you to present potentially in March. And just solicit your feedback on this as you review it, just get back to us.
Wasn't there an email that went around our email boxes that is it actually a county that has a gun range? Maybe I saw it in a different box, but it is a county-sponsored gun range. That I received some information on. I'm just wondering if we.
Oh, ours?
Well, yeah, I don't know if you guys saw that too. Maybe I saw
Well, the
it.
sheriff's department has one, but I think it's within the city of Springfield.
No, this was a different county.
Oh, different county, okay.
It's open to the public, but it's county funded and sponsored.
Okay.
I'll see if I can find that. Maybe they'd have some more guidelines that we could follow.
And we've looked at some NRA requirements or, berm height, they tend to recommend that they be somewhere that's below grade, if possible, for safety and sound, those sort of requirements. So there are some guidance out there. It's just not as easy as coming up with the guidance like a cell tower, dirt mine, or landfill, because there's no government entity regulating it.
Also, I've been giving that some thought as well. When we do come up with a proper distance from the nearest house, maybe that would be from the shooting point. Because you could have an oblong parcel that's 300 acres and then have just a little piece close to a house, but your intention is to shoot halfway, 500 yards up the other way. And so,
Right.
I mean, that would be a consideration as well, to give people a little bit of flexibility anyway. Also, I was thinking, we had mentioned outsourcing some of the zoning. Are we still looking at that to collaborate with this, or are we going to do this without that? Or?
No, I think we are looking at taking a more general look at our code to try and, I hate to modernize it a little bit for some of the regular problems that we come across. And we are looking at outsourcing that as well, and then using that same firm to kind of tie into how these sort of zoning changes would affect the comprehensive plan. So that is something we discussed and are looking at, but when we have a scope in mind, we'll present it to the board.
I just didn't want to get so far down the road with the ones we're doing now, and then somebody else come in and have to revamp the whole thing all over again.
Right.
Anyone else with any questions or comments? Thank you, sir. With that, we'll move on to item 8, annexation. It's consideration to approve to support a notice of annexation petition requesting annexation of approximately 1.12 acres in the city of Springfield, owned by the Effingham County Industrial Development Authority, map 367A, parcel number 57, and map 367, parcel 57A and 57B.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we received a petition for annexation from the city of Springfield. This is the property that the chamber building and our day offices does sit on. The request is made via Mr. Herndon as well as the Effingham Health Systems. The intent is to incorporate this property into the city municipality and combine the parcels listed or noted in the application. The Effingham Health System intends to purchase this facility for uses of their medical facilities. Staff recommends approval of the annexation.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Can I entertain a motion?
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 1.
Second.
A motion to approve by Commissioner Loper, and a second by Commissioner Deloach. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And it carries. Number 9 is back to Stephanie. Consideration to reappoint Barry Flannery, did you say that correctly? The Effingham County Hospital Authority as representative of the 5th District, which I know I'm behind on. I'm searching.
We're going to do it.
Somebody.
That's actually part of this discussion as well. This is Mr. Barry Lenore. He represents the 5th District for Commissioner Kiefer. I had a discussion with Commissioner Kiefer as to if he wishes to reappoint Mr. Lenore, and he does. His term is set to expire on February 28th of this month. So if you all approve to reappoint him, his new term will expire in February of 2025. Mr. Lenore does act as the Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees, and he's also the Chair of the Finance Committee. Staff recommends approval of the reappointment. Also, let me say, there has been some discussion to bring to you all. If you are interested in possibly just allowing a representative that may not necessarily reside in your district,
Yes.
if you are open to those options, that individual would still represent your district. You would be, of course.
I have a person. He's not in my district.
And there's nothing in the act creating the hospital authority to prevent that?
They're going to revise it,
That would be great.
assuming you all are.
Okay.
This person has an interest in serving, also medical background. It would be great.
Awesome.
So it'd be very interesting.
That, I make a motion to approve the reappointment of Barry Lenore to the Effingham Hospital Board.
Second.
A motion approved by Commissioner Kiefer and a second by Commissioner Roach. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And it carries. Last thing with new business is number 10, it's a resolution. Consideration to approve resolution number 021-004, submitted application for a post incentive grant for stormwater master plan. Mr. Eric.
Good evening, everyone. Back in the fall, you had an action item on your agenda to approve a pre-application to the Coastal Incentive Grant Program for a stormwater master plan. We did submit that and were invited to submit a full application. That full application was due last week. With that was a resolution to support the project and commit funding to it should it be granted. The project is a 2-year project, $160 per year for $320 total. It's a 50-50 grant. The match is made up of both in-kind and cash donation or sources. The funding would be SPLOST funds as well as the grant for anything that was not in kind. And there's quite a bit of staff time, including myself, GIS, involved with that. As you read in the staff report, the purpose of the project is to do a master plan. It will fall on the heels of the stormwater utility feasibility study that we're doing now. Really the intent of this master plan is to identify all of our needs, prioritize those, create a capital project plan, including cost estimate and schedule, and the assumption that over time our MS4 boundary and MS4 requirements will grow with the state. And so this master plan is a long-range look at that program. So I would recommend your approval of the resolution to support the grant application.
Was this in the retreat numbers that we were looking at? I know we were.
Yes, sir, I believe it was.
Any discussion from the board or questions?
Make motion, alternative one.
Second.
Motion for alternative 1, Commissioner Deloach, and the second by Commissioner Loper. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And it carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next thing up, we have our reports from the administrative staff and commissioners.
We're right on the 6 o'clock under, so I've got no report anyway, so.
Do we want to take a break now, or do we want to continue on?
65-minute break.
Take 5 minutes and start at 6 o'clock.
Do we need a motion for that?
No.
We're going to take a 5-minute break and we'll recess. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. Now it's almost 6 o'clock. We'll be back at 6:05. Back in into session with the planning board portion of our agenda. The first item up is, number one, of course, the planning board recommends approving an application by Kent Elmore, agent from Millington Timber Company, to rezone 25 acres located on Midland Road from AR1 to AR2 for the future development of a residential subdivision, Meadows at Midland, map number 324, parcel number 115B, for the first district. I want to ask if anybody's speaking for this tonight. Just state your name.
Kent Elmore. I'm an agent, yeah.
Good stage case.
It's a pretty straightforward deal. We're just converting 25 acres into those 20 lots right there. The water, I still call them Middle Georgia Water. I forget, the water utility company is providing, they're going to run down the main on Midland from the courthouse road intersection. So we've got, that's why we're going to AR2, so we can get down to the half acre, so we can run the community water in there for the water services. And then the lots will be serviced through septic systems from the sewer. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking for this proposed?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Come forward to the mic, please. You're speaking for?
My name's Reggie Studio.
Yes, sir.
I have a property joining this, and I have a pond that's probably, well, it's approximately 1.5 acres, and it stays probably 12 feet deep when it's dry, and it maintains probably 15 to 18 feet of water. And I just want to know if there's going to be some sort of security or some kind of berm or fencing or whatever to keep small children from falling in and drowning when nobody's attending them. I've heard of similar situations where this has taken place before. I just would hate for something like that to happen, you know, because I know new people moving into the area sometimes would maybe go on different boundaries with properties if it wasn't, you know, some sort of, which I'd put up signs, I guess, but, you know, children, I don't know how well they'll obey that. And I just, you know, shows some concern for people that may have pit bulldogs or whatever that would come over on my property and jump on my dogs, because I've had that happen before. I have small dogs, and I've seen it before. I'd hate for that to happen. I got beehives. I don't want anybody to get stung, and I would just like to request, you know, some sort of a safety issue. You know, if they're going to put that in, I completely understand what they want to do. I've lived there all my life. I know it's, you know, progression for the county or whatever, and it's, you know, it's good, but I just want to, you know, maintain a safe environment.
So are you speaking for, you're okay? You're looking for some added safety features that you're speaking for?
Yes, sir. I mean, you know, like a dirt berm or privacy fencing of some type to keep small children from coming over on. I mean, I have pictures of the pond and stuff. I measured it, it's like 100 and just a little over 100 yards from the property line, the pond is. So it'd be real easy for somebody to come across over there. It's a wide open field from the property line over to where the pond's at.
Yes, sir.
If you just consider that or whatever, you know, that's all.
I don't know if that's something we can require as a stipulation.
Mr. Chair,
listen,
you may want to hear from our staff
Yes.
first on presenting the material.
Or should we continue with anybody for or against it?
Close the public hearing.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Studio.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else speaking for this tonight? Anybody speaking against it? Ma'am, could you come to the mic and you want to speak against it, please?
I would just stand for, I'm just saying for the other order right next to
I can't hear you, ma'am. Could you come to the mic, please?
That's just a continuation to my properties, like right there, like with Reggie.
Yes, ma'am.
And he's gonna have 25 houses that are facing, you know, the backs of the houses are gonna be right here where the main driveway is. I'm just requesting to put like a privacy fence around the subdivision so that, you know, we're looking this way and their houses are, you know, the back of the houses are all looking this way. Our house is like here, they'll be looking right here, it's all wide open. I'm just requesting that maybe they could put a privacy fence around it so that we wouldn't have, because our house is right where that Midland Road sign is right there, that's, our house is literally facing right like that.
Yes, ma'am.
Their houses, they're putting in, that's the back of their houses is all looking that way. And the pond would be like right there by, like the 1080. Just requesting that's all, if you don't mind.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
appreciate
Thank
it,
you.
appreciate
Ma'am,
it. Thank you so much.
If you don't mind, ma'am, if you don't mind just stating your name into the microphone.
Wendy Hall,
for the
I'm
record.
sorry. Wendy Hall.
Yeah.
Thank you, sorry.
Thank you. Anyone else is speaking against this tonight? I'll close the public hearing. Any questions?
I have something. 30 years ago, and this goes back to the same thing, the dangers of ponds, swimming pools. 30 years ago, I put my swimming pool in, and I put a privacy fence down the road in front of it. Well, the county, and I didn't have no kids, hardly even having anybody living within 4 miles of me, and the county made me put a privacy fence all the way around my pool. So, you know, I mean, so.
Now, pools don't
what's
have
the-
safety slopes.
Huh?
Ponds are required to have safety slopes and pools don't. Just one difference.
I know it, but he's got his beehives and his ponds. But what's the difference of kids coming over there out of the subdivision than it was for them to come and there was nobody within 4 miles of where I live? That's what I'm saying. He ought to be protected. He's already there. So if somebody's coming in on him, then he ought to have a right to be against it and probably make him do something for it.
Listen, I don't have any problem with that. We were already planning on having deed restrictions to make sure that people put privacy fences in along that side anyway. We met Mr. Reggie at the planning and zoning meeting. I don't see the need for us to have to put 1,500 foot of fence in right now. I mean, we've got plenty of time to do all that, and we can just make that as part of the deed restriction. So if you buy one of those lots, you're required to put an 8-foot privacy fence along the back of the property line.
Well, I don't have nothing against you.
No,
I'm just saying-
no, it's okay.
I'm just
Really,
saying,
it's all-
when I did it, they made me do it.
And quite honestly, the reality of it is the folks who are going to be building there probably don't want any of his dogs and any of his bees coming into their stuff either, right? So they'd probably put fences up there whether we were going to make them do it or not. So, yeah, we don't have any problem with that. If that's if that meets with their comfort level.
That's right. Is it going to be an HOA or something there?
A minimal one. We're going to have to. I mean, we obviously with the common areas. That's exactly right. We're going to have some building covenants where it's brick or hardy board, no vinyl. I mean, this is going to be a little bit of a middle level neighborhood. It's not a starter neighborhood, but with the stormwater retention pond that we've got and the mailbox cluster area, the common areas, there's got to be some type of homeowners association to kind of deal with
the smaller areas.
Yeah, just deal with all that stuff. Yeah. So.
Any other questions or comments, commissioners or staff? Is that something we would get involved with, or is that something we would leave up to them? Excuse my experience with this.
Well, the rezoning, we normally wouldn't get into the details like that. This is, the next item is a sketch plan, the sketch plan.
That covers that.
So this didn't so much come up at the planning board in public, at the public hearing. We did have another similar case that's been tabled for tonight, or postponed for tonight, where that issue did come up and there was some discussion. But for this case, actually, we didn't have opposition or discussion. So it's not something we would normally require as a condition.
Thank you, sir. that, Commissioner Floyd is in. Today, entertain a motion.
Hold on, I got a question. Now, how do we take care of the deed restriction? Do we add that as a stipulation with the motion?
No.
Do we add the privacy fence on one side, or how do we reference that?
I don't think we can have, nor would we want to have them, the county have a party enter into a deed restriction, because we wouldn't be able to enforce it.
Civil matter.
Yeah, correct, right, between the civil party, between the individual parties. So, as for requiring fencing in the past, have we? Okay. So that's just kind of a tricky issue as to how we actually require someone to do that, since we can't really require them to put a deed restriction on the property. They could voluntarily agree to do it, but it can't be a condition.
We got one coming up that had that in there.
Can we make a stipulation?
And for a deed restriction, or just a requirement to put the fence
It's a
up?
requirement for a fence in the back of their property.
So, yeah, so that's a okay, that's what I was asking. So that's not a deed restriction, that's adding that stipulation that we will approve the.
So we can have a stipulation how they do it as their business, but just, we have something teed in there that a fence has to be put up.
Or something to, and he said he didn't mind doing it, so.
Somebody, 1 second.
What he said he's gonna put it in a deed, so that's good.
Okay. So if it is and it was a condition of a subdivision? Of a subdivision. Okay. Okay. So not on the rezoning, but on the sketch plan, I guess, as it can.
No, it was to the rezoning.
Okay. So on the one that was tabled, as a condition for the rezoning, this is the Oglethorpe. That one, they did as a condition of rezoning, they required a fence be put up.
Yeah, that's the buffer line.
I'm going to let Lee.
Help us.
I probably would recommend adding anything in addition to what our ordinance already requires. If it doesn't require it, I wouldn't recommend that we require it, absent some just really special area. If the applicant wants to do that, that's his prerogative. But I wouldn't require it as a condition to zoning that a fence go up. Because, that's going to lead to every other subdivision. How do we distinguish this one from any other one that's been approved in the past or in the future? So I wouldn't recommend doing that. If they're going to provide for it in their covenants, then that's something they can do. But I would recommend that the county requires something that's not required by our ordinance.
Any other discussion on the board?
I'll make a motion to approve the staff and planning board recommendations. Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Deloach, second, is that Commissioner Keeper?
Yes.
Commissioner Keeper. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And it carries. Consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Kent Elmore, agent for Miller Timber Company to rezone 25 acres located on Middle Road from AR1 to AR2 for future development of a residential subdivision, Meadows and Midland, map number 324, parcel number 115B, in the first district. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the second reading. Second.
A motion by Commissioner Deloach, and a second by Commissioner Kiefer. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And it carries. We'll move on with the sketch plan. So that is zoning. I appreciate you, Mr. Elmer, your willingness to do that.
Okay.
Keep things safe and we're all interested in that. We just have to be careful that we don't get into the civil matter side of it. You know, we're just all going to be good neighbors.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I appreciate you.
Happy to.
Yes, sir. Planning board recommends approving an application by Kent Elmore, agent for Miller Timber Company, for a sketch plan for Meadows at Medler located on Miller Road, consisting of 20 residential lots, map number 324, parcel number 115 of the first district.
So with the sketch plan, there's usually conditions added because there's no zoning map amendment, you don't do second reading, there's no change to the map. But in this case, and in the case of the other one that's tabled, we did start taking into account the kind of recommendations that staff are going to share with the applicant, and we did include those on the staff report. But I want to make note that the water utility management, for the water providers, they've provided a water availability letter, and that's included in your packet. And also, they did provide additional information when the fire chief asked about fire flow. So we do have that information. With this one, since it is essentially, there's a question of whether it's a cul-de-sac or a dead end, but in our staff's interpretation of the road, it is something, it is a road and it's a street. And the ordinance does have a limitation on the length of a block, so blocks need to be between 400 and 800 feet long, and whether we call it a cul-de-sac with a turnaround at the end or a dead end, that will eventually be used to extend into the adjacent parcel. That's, you know, we've got language in our ordinance to cover all of those things. So one recommendation that we will be making is that they revisit the design to allow for, to limit the block length to 800 feet. And that can be done in any number of ways, step out to adjacent parcel, something like that.
I did notice the DPH had a denial on that. Is that something we'll have on?
That's just their sort of first letter on the subject.
Any discussion by the board or questions? Can you entertain a motion?
I make a motion to approve the sketch plan.
I'll second.
A motion by Commissioner Deloach and a second by Commissioner Kiefer. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And you carry.
Before we go any further, can we make mention of those items that we tabled, just in case there's anyone present?
Oh, yes, I agree. If you weren't here earlier, we did table a couple of items tonight. If you're here to speak on those, or speak on behalf or in opposition for it, we tabled number 12 and 13 until March 16. That was Freddie H. Mitchell to rezone 3.06 acres. And also numbers 18, 19, and 20. Toss Allen, agent for Kyle J. Bach, rezone 10 acres, R1 to R6. If you're here for that, that's been tabled. That I believe is tabled to March the 3rd.
March the 2nd.
March the 2nd. Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to item 4. Planning board recommends approving an application by Vicki Inez Miller, agent for Vera McLaughlin, to rezone 5 acres located at 179 W Dasher Lane from AR1 to AR2 to subdivide and recombine with adjacent parcel map number 416, parcel number 3 in the first district. Anyone speaking for this tonight?
I'm Vicki Miller. We're just trying to get the 5 acres back to a 4 acres to get rezoned to a zone 2 instead of zone 1, and she's wanting that 1 acre put back into what she has already. That 1 acre that's getting taken off. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Should I be going to staff first?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll reverse that next time. So to carry on with the public hearing and then go to staff? Okay. Anyone else speaking for this tonight? Anyone speaking in opposition or against this tonight? With that, I'll close the public hearing, and now we'll hear from staff. I should have listed this to begin with.
All right, this isn't working, so we need to, all right, this parcel exists already, and really what's happening is that an acre is being removed from it and added to this parcel, so no new lot is being created. One's being made smaller, one's being made a little larger. It is a private road, but we're not creating any new lots, so we thought that we could recommend approval. This is merely sort of family housekeeping that's happening. And because it's going from 5 acres down to a 1 and 4, a 1 that will be absorbed into an AR2, it all has to be rezoned to AR2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the board?
I'll make a motion to approve the staff and planning board recommendations.
Second.
A recommendation for approval, a motion by Commissioner Deloach, and a second by Commissioner Roper. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And it carries. Consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Vicki I.S. Miller, agent for Vera McLaughlin, to rezone 5 acres located at 179 Frank W. Dasher Lane from AR1 to AR2 to subdivide and recombine with an adjacent parcel, map number 416, parcel number 3 in the first district.
I'll make a motion to approve the second reading.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Deloach, second by Mr. Kiefer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And it carries. Item number 6 is the planning board recommends approving an application by Edward Ringer for a variance located at 200 Greenbridge Lane to allow for the placement of an accessory structure in the front yard, map number 352G, parcel number 4 of the first district.
So this parcel is AR2, and it's not 5 acres, so we were unable to make any recommendation. We were unable to handle it using the change to the accessory building ordinance that y'all approved recently. So we do frequently get these kind of requests for smaller lots where the house has been placed in the rear and there's not a lot of room left for an accessory building, or there's plans in this case for gardens in the back and garden sheds. And the owner's original intent was to place the garage in the front. This is something that either it wasn't discussed at the time of the initial building permit, or it was, and it was just forgotten. I'm not sure. But in any case, the driveway's in place, the primary structure's in place towards the rear of the lot. This parcel is on a corner. This is the corner kind of looking up the 2 different ways. It's heavily treed, and the owners have said that they will maintain a screen there to disguise the proposed garage building. So given that there is essentially a hardship whether it's created, at what point it was created, we don't know. But
So the garage will be connected to the house?
no, it will in fact be up at the blue circle around that building towards the front. It'll be up by the front it'll be kind of visible from this point past trees. So it'll be in the front, but this is, as you see, a very rustic, heavily treed subdivision. And so the house is just situated at the back of the parcel. Just how they planned it.
I'd like to open the public hearing. Is anyone here tonight speaking for this? Anyone speaking for the variance? Anyone speaking against it? With that, I'll close the public hearing. Any questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the staff and planning board recommendations.
Second.
It's a motion to approve by Commissioner Deloach, second by Commissioner Roper. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And it carries. Consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Edward Ringer for a variance located at 200 Greenbridge Lane to allow for the placement of an accessory structure in the front yard of map number 352G, parcel number 4 in the first district. Have a motion.
Make a motion to approve second reading.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Roper, second by Commissioner Deloach. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And it carries. Item number 8, the planning board recommends approving an application by Patrick and Rebecca Jerome to rezone 6.85 acres located at 1363 Low Ground Road from AR1 to AR2 for the creation of a 3-lot subdivision, map number 393, parcel number 23 in the 2nd district.
So this 6.85 acres is zone AR1, and the owners intend to split it into a total of 3 lots. 2 smaller lots at the front near Low Ground Road, and then the larger one at the back for themselves. There are wetlands on the property towards the back, so they opted to just make one large lot for themselves at the back and then sell the 2 up at the front. And that requires rezoning to AR2 for all of the entire parcel. Staff is recommending approval.
With that, I'll open up the public hearing. Is anyone here tonight speaking for this? Anyone speaking against the rezoning? With that, I'll close the public hearing. I'll make a motion to approve alternative 1 in this case.
Second.
It's a motion by Commissioner Burdette, second by Commissioner Deloach. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And it carries. Consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Patrick and Rebecca Jerome to rezone 6.85 acres located at 1363 Low Ground Road from AR1 to AR2 for the creation of a 3-lot subdivision, map number 393, parcel number 23 in the second district. I'd like to make a motion to approve the second reading.
Second.
So a motion by Commissioner Burdette, second by Commissioner Deloach. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no, and it carries. Item number 10, the planning board recommends approving an application by Cash Redmond to rezone 2 out of 58 acres located at 986 Courthouse Road from AR1 to AR2 to allow for the creation of a home site, map number 368, parcel number 8B in the 4th district.
So this is a very simple one. The 2 acres requires rezoning to AR2, and this is the proposed plat. As you can see, it's sectioned out there. For a home site. Staff recommends alternative 1.
I'll open the public hearing. Is anyone here tonight speaking for this proposed rezoning? Anyone speaking against? If no one, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions or comments by commissioners? Should we entertain a motion?
Make a motion to approve planning board and staff recommendations.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Loper, second by Commissioner Deloach. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And it carries. Consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Cash Redmond to rezone 2 out of 58 acres located at 986 Courthouse Road from AR1 to AR2 to allow for the creation of a home site, map number 368, parcel number 8B in the 4th district. Have a motion, please.
Make a motion to okay the second reading.
It's a motion to approve by Commissioner Loper, second by Commissioner Kiefer. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And it carries. Items number 12 and 13 are of course tabled. Move on to item 14. Planning board recommends approving an application by Robert Warner for the conditional use of a rural business located at 490 Stillwell Road to operate a beehive supply business, map number 410, parcel number 1 in the 4th district.
This is a proposal for a rural business. It's a home-based business. It's an online business actually, and so the property was rezoned, or was previously received a rural business designation to operate quarterback clubs, and they set the owners of that sold property, and now the current owners, Warners, propose to continue their business, which they're operating in Alabama, greenbeehives.com, where they sell beehive box parts. And so in order to do that, we had to, in order to issue a business license, we had to take them through the rural business process first, so they can be legally given a business license.
That will open up a public hearing. Is there anyone here speaking tonight on behalf of this? This is considered a conditional use for rural business. Anyone speaking against? Then I'll close the public hearing.
Make a motion to approve planning board and staff recommendations. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Lover, second by Commissioner Kiefer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Robert Warner for conditional use of a rural business located at 490 Stillwell Road to operate a rehab supply business map number 410, parcel number 1 in the 4th district. Have a motion.
Make a motion to approve second reading.
Second.
Motion to approve second reading by Commissioner Deloach, second by Commissioner Loper, second by Commissioner Deloach. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And it carries. Moving on to item 16. The planning board recommends approving an application by George Bishop for conditional use located at 377 High Bluff Road to operate a sawmill business on a parcel consisting of 9.05 acre parcel, map number 459, parcel number 66 in the 4th district.
So again, this is a request for a rural business. Mr. Bishop has a portable sawmill, which he's going to keep in a building on the site. And this meets all the requirements of rural business. Property has frontage, there's sufficient acreage, staff recommends approval.
With that, I'll open up the public hearing. Is anyone here tonight speaking for it?
My name is George Bishop. It's for me. So,
Yes, sir.
I spoke last time. I just figured this time it was for y'all to either say yay or nay.
Is anyone else speaking for this tonight?
This is the road next to Dr. Ratchford's office.
No, this is out there past, come from my house. Go into
All right, I'll say something.
275.
I mean, it's pretty
High Bluff
residential
Road.
area. Okay, I'll say you're wrong. Yeah, I figured I'd miss the for that.
Thank you, sir. Anyone here speaking against it tonight?
That's Highland Drive.
That's right.
With that, I'll close the public hearing.
Make a motion to approve order number 1, staff and planning board recommendation.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Lumber, second by Commissioner Deloach. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And it carries. Consideration to approve the second reading of an application by George Bishop for conditional use located at 377 High Bluff Road to operate a sawmill business on a parcel consisting of 9.05 acre parcel, map number 459, parcel number 66 in the 4th district.
Make a motion to approve second reading.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Lumber, second by Commissioner Deloach. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And it carries. Item number 22. Planning board recommends approving an application by Ashland, Bachelor, agent Eugene and Ron Miller to rezone 5.09 acres located at 111 Chase Drive from AR1 to AR2 for the separation of 2 home sites, map number 446A, parcel 8 in the 5th district.
So this is a 5-acre parcel that's currently zoned AR1. It's part of the Birds Branch Mini Farm subdivision. We were unable to locate any covenants or restrictions, and as yet, no current resident has shown us that there is some opposition to this, and so because it is a current subdivision, and our rules do allow re-subdivision if certain conditions are met, and I've included those on the staff report. Basically, there are 4 questions to ask. Is the lot size compatible? Well, it's an AR1 lot. It currently has 2 homes on it because our AR1 zoning allows a second home for a family member, and that's what's currently happening. There's their families. The people living in both houses are family. They're related. So that is currently, it meets the requirements of our ordinance. The proposal is to split it so that they can sell the properties due to family circumstances. This is the best option for them at this time. And of course, because of that, it needs to be rezoned. The next condition or the next criterion that we have to look at is the current use affected by economic factors. Well, the family's economic factors are coming into play that they need to sell. And the third, will proposed re-subdivision affect property values? No new development is proposed. I mean, there are currently 2 houses. you know, the plat will show a property line, the tax map will show a property line, but no other change is proposed at this time. There are currently 2 homes, there will continue to be 2 homes, there will have different people living in them, they will no longer be family members living, you know, in both houses. And the fourth is the proposed subdivision compatible with subdivision regulations. And as I said, we were unable to find any, and the current residents of the subdivision haven't produced any current restrictive covenants that would preclude or prevent this from happening. So with all of that, the staff has recommended approval of the rezoning.
Thank you. With that, I'll open up the public hearing. Are you speaking for us?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm Ashland Bachelor. The Millers wanted to attend tonight, but they're snowed in Arkansas, so could not make it. So basically, everything Ms. Teresa stated, we're just trying to subdivide the property. We've already had it surveyed. It's going to be 2.54 acres and then a 2.55 acre lot as shown on the screen. Basically, we're simply requesting that the property be split and sold as 2 separate parcels. I know the last meeting, several of the neighbors were concerned that they were going to put a trailer park in or there would be more traffic up and down the road. And that's not what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to sell it and move on. There is a shared well there, so if that became an issue with environmental health, we would have the county either approve to get an attorney draw up a shared well agreement or install a new well, and the Millers are on board to do that. We're willing to put special stipulations and whatever we need to do to make the owner or the neighbors feel more comfortable that there's no new development coming, no trailer park, whatever we need to do to make them happy. We will be more than happy to work with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking for this tonight?
Hi,
State your name, please.
my name is Jessica Miller. My husband and I actually own the land that is located on this property, at this property. And we purchased it about 5 years ago, settled in, planned on living there until we retired. We love Lincoln and we wanted to be here for good. 2 years ago, his parents requested permission and were granted a permit to build a home on the property next to us, next to our home. They built their retirement home next to us and we took over as their permanent caregivers. We had no idea the hardships that we were getting ready to face. My husband almost immediately was injured, his neck got a little fracture, and he was not able to work for a year. When he tried to return to work, he was asked to resign because everybody is downsizing. During that time, I also suffered an injury to my foot and was no longer able to stand for more than 15 minutes. And that ended my career as a travel nurse. During all of that, we were also taking care of his parents who were in and out of the hospital at least 10 times in the 2 years that they were there. My husband also spent a week in the hospital when he was bitten by a snake. Like, it can't get worse than that, but yes, it did. This is just a fraction of some of the hardships that we endured in the 2 years that we have lived here. While my husband was unable to work, I was the only provider for the family. And I couldn't work bedside nursing anymore. So I took up 4 different jobs in the community. When COVID actually hit the community, at that time I only had 2 jobs. I was a pediatric nurse for children on ventilators at home. I was also driving rideshare, providing transportation for tourists and things like that, enjoying downtown. Well, those jobs were not compatible, and for the safety of my patients, I had to stop working my second job. My husband took up a job as a semi-truck driver at that time, and he left me home to take care of my child, his parents, both of our homes, and the property by myself. His parents also have a daughter that lives nearby that is disabled with a traumatic brain injury. While maintaining all of this, I have been pushed and pushed to emotional, physical, and mental limits, and I can only function at that level for so long. His parents recognized the stress that I was enduring, and they found other caregivers to take care of them. So they asked me if I would be willing to sell half of the land so that they can sell their home, cash, liquidate their property, and live on that during their retirement while someone else provides their care. I'm trying to be accommodating to those requests with how challenging life has been lately and how disappointing it is to give up a home I expected to retire in. I still would like to accommodate their wishes and allow them to find other caregivers. I never expected that the neighbors would be so upset. While a lot of this was going on, they were helping take care of the lawn. They were providing meals when my in-laws came home from the hospital. They were helping take care of our chickens. They were doing all kinds of things that I cannot express enough gratitude for. And I'm disappointed that I have let them down. However, I must focus on taking care of my family and the provisions that they need. I can't turn down an offer to sell part of my property when we are in such a dire situation. I never thought that when I owned a property in America and I got under hard times that I would not be able to sell it to provide. It's an investment, and when times are hard, you let your investments go to take care of what you need to take care of. So I'm just asking the committee tonight to please protect my right, uphold my right to sell my property and to provide for my family. Thank you.
Anyone else speaking for this tonight? Anyone speaking against this tonight? Please state your name, sir.
Yeah, Keith Moore. I live directly across the road. I'm probably the one she was speaking to more than anybody of helping take care of them, because I was very good friends with Jimmy and Luann. I purchased my property in 4/16/1995, and the big selling points to me was a single-family home dwelling. I bought the property with the railroad tracks to the back of me, which pretty much guaranteed there'd be nobody moving in on top of me. That was a very big selling point to me at the time. I was sold this property under the conclusion that there was a covenant on the property. Even my deed states subject to the covenants on the property. When Jimmy and Luann first attempted to start building, I did go to the courthouse, and the lady told me up there that any covenants that was put on the property was only good for 10 years. I was never aware of that. I don't think none of us was ever aware of that. A covenant to me was, it's a lifetime. But anyway, with that being said, all of us that live on the right side of this road were original buyers. We've all been there about 26 years. I'm here to ask today that each one of you please save my neighborhood. We are on a dead-end road, and to split property up in the middle of it would just be bad. To go to AR1 knowing with the road frontage that it could be split into 4 lots. We determined that the last time because I had talked to Ratchford about it. This would destroy the neighborhood I love. The Millers have not lived across the road from me more than 4 years, and I've been very good friends with them. But they are moving on, and we are left with the mess over a family dispute. I'm not even going to get into half of what she went into. I just ask each one of you think as if it was across the road from you, how would you feel about it? And to keep it AR1 and sell as is or move the mobile home off of the property. Please don't let the neighborhood be going as I know it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else speaking against this tonight?
Yes,
Yes, sir. I'm Kimball Warnock. I live across the street from the Millers in Bird Branch subdivision. And I'm just reaffirming that my wife and I's position is that we do not want to mismatch zoning of our subdivision. You know, we've been there 26 years, raised 2 kids there, want to raise 2 grandkids there. You know, we like things the way they are. It's a real small, quiet neighborhood. And, you know, I hate that all the personal stuff about it has really come into play. I know hardships come, and I feel bad about all that kind of stuff. But, you know, this is about our way of living. We're the ones that are going to be left here. You know, the Millers are moving, and they got a nice home, a nice big shop on that property, and then they got this 20-year-old double-wide trailer that's barely livable. You know, the maintenance and upkeep on the trailer hasn't been kept as needed. It's going to work has to be done to it before they can even consider selling it. And like I said, there's only one well on the property. They were allowed to do this through the stipulation of them being blood-related son, daughter, grandparents, and I don't think that that rule was put in place to then turn around and be able to tear a neighborhood apart like this would do, you know, with the mismatched rezoning. And they could actually put 4 trailers across the front of that lot because it has 400 foot of frontage to the road. Now they say that they're not going to do it, you know, and all of that, but we know that the next people that come along can go through the same process that we're going through now, and who knows where it would wind up. You can't say that you promised that it wouldn't wind up that way, because it could. And thank you for your time. That's my position. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warnock. Is anyone else speaking against this tonight?
I'm Kathy Hodges, and my husband and I were the very first property owners in this subdivision over 30 years ago when Mr. Carroll Ron developed this property. And all of our lots are AR1, and it was originally intended to be single dwelling sites. You know, AR2 does allow for multiple sites, and I am adamantly opposed to that. We have a very small neighborhood. We don't need additional people and traffic, and you know, right now the two homes that are there was family. They could sell that single wide, and it could stay in AR1 with the nice home that's there, that sits on the property. You know, the family members made the choice to leave, and I hate that they've had hardship, but the original intent of how it is now is not going to be the intent in the future. So I adamantly oppose to this rezoning, and every owner on this road could request the same thing a couple of years down the road, and I certainly do not want that. We do have children and grandchildren, and I want them to grow up in the environment that we've had since we built there 30 years ago.
Thank you.
My name's Eddie Hodges, and the wife of Kathy. If I was understood right, that the county allowed them to put a second home there because of a family, to take care of a family. So that was the main reason why the second home was put on there, because it was all supposed to be single family dwellings. Sound like to me, you know, I know and I hate it that they have to leave too, but also that I can see that they could be making a profit off of it also, and the double wide could be sold as is, and like Sam says, it desires a lot of work. So I would say to sell the double wide, somebody could have a nice place. You don't have to go to all the trouble to get another well put in and all that stuff to leave the neighborhood what it was designed for 20-something years ago. So that's just all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Dr. James Cornwell. I own the property directly to the other side as you go down Chase Drive. When we bought our property approximately 11 years ago, the previous owner ensured to us that this property would be AR1, greater than 5 acres per lot in this area, and they would be consistently single-family dwellings. And at the time, we were told that there were covenants and conditions to support that. It's my understanding now that those may not have been in place, but I took his word and he took mine that I would stand by that commitment to keep it as is, and that everybody else in the subdivision had done the same thing. Other concerns have already been voiced as far as what could happen with traffic, what could happen with subdividing this lot into 2 and changing it to AR2. My concern on top of all that is this may set a precedent within the subdivision. So in the future, someone could come along, purchase one of the lots as is, apply to subdividing it as AR2, and then all of a sudden our 5 acre plus community is being whittled up. This could easily happen. This is the start of what could be devastating for this community. It's a small community. We're a very close-knit group. We know each other. We watch out for each other. And I do not want to see this. So my wife Cheryl and I come before you to emphasize our opposition to this change in the zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cornwell.
Hi, my name is Christine Osman. My husband and I have been living in 101 Chase Drive since 2008, and I agree with my neighbors. It's a sad situation for the Millers that they're having to leave. However, we don't want to set precedents that these lots be subdivided into multiple divisions, whether it's 2, 3, or 4, because when people sell the lots, then they follow suit because everybody's trying to make extra money on their lots. All of our people that been there for a long time, and we all bought for the same reason. We want to have a single dwelling on it and maintain it that way with the acreage that it came with. It was never meant to be subdivided or anything else, only to take care of family members as it's supposed to by the AR1 regulations. And that is why you only see one water and sewer system supporting that, because it was just an emergency situation and we understood that. And that's why the whole neighborhood supported that. But we are not in support of further division of those properties or any other properties. And we appreciate your understanding in the matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Rebecca Shaw. I live at 116 Chase Drive, and I'm not going to get into a big speech because I think everybody said what needs to be said, but I wanted to voice my disapproval of it and let it go on record that I don't approve. It should stay how it is, and that's how I feel. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Anyone else speaking against this tonight? With that, I'll close the public hearing. I do have a question, Teresa. We have a plat that shows the neighborhood. The second question would be, is there any adjacent AR2s at all?
This is the neighborhood up there. I don't have the zoning map.
There is a plat. The original plat is not, I have an electronic copy of the document, so I don't have the page number. It's 292 in the PDF, if that helps. But it is, I think it's what you're asking for.
Oh, it is. You got the locals of the zoning around it.
Yeah, if you look at page 292 in the PDF.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting.
Yeah.
It's in your packet.
find it on there? What?
Says comments.
I'm just kind of looking to,
Oh, okay, I'm just looking for it.
I'm looking at now. Is there any of the other parcels outside of that? It's adjacent to it?
It's all larger tracks.
All one here.
Everything's up to AR1.
Everything. That was my biggest question. Any questions or comments by commissioners?
I'll make some comments. First of all, I mean, I agree with the neighbors. I think everybody agrees that it's a hardship, harsh situation, but I look at it as I went in and I bought a 5+ acre tract. It was AR1, and everything else in that subdivision was single family dwelling, that I would concede that this is going to stay single family dwelling, this is going to stay AR1. And as we've heard, a lot of these neighbors have been here for quite a while. And it will, you know, you say you do it one time, but once this is done, it does change the makeup of the neighborhood. And just my opinion, again, I just want to be clear, I do state, I mean, this seems to be a very sad story, but also there are a lot of other folks involved. They're here tonight as well. And I just don't think that I would support splitting the lots up. That's just me. I could be out in the field, but that's just where I am.
And I concur with Eugene.
No,
They
I
bought
see.
them as 5 acre lots, AR1, and they were not supposed to be split up. The trailer, they don't put a trailer there for hardship.
Exactly. I don't even think I'll look at.
Then the hardship's over, the trailer should be moved out.
Yes, sir.
So everything is still intact with the,
And I feel bad for the hardship, but, you know, we look at things when we're looking at people's property, and for the most part, you know, we believe that people should be able to do what they want to, it's their property. But that shouldn't create a hardship for the neighbors in any way. And the second thing I look at is adjacent zoning. Is there any other zoning like that in the area that we've not seen that?
Well, I want to speak, I mean, every one of these are my neighbors. I mean, I'm within hollering distance of all of y'all. And it just, when you look, it's clear this was originally developed as a subdivision. It was Bird Branch subdivision. By virtue of not having covenants, that doesn't mean it's not a subdivision. It just means it doesn't have covenants. And, you know, one thing I kept going back to, looking, you know, at our subdivision ordinance, when it discusses re-subdivision, I think it's the point you brought up, out of all due respect to your opinions. I really couldn't, you know, whether the size of the proposed lots is compatible. I can't see it. Is, you know, whether the intended use of the property is maybe, I mean, it's still residential. With the economic, I'm not sure what it means there. If you read, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find, the changing economic conditions, it uses eminent domain as an example. So I'm not sure, unfortunately, I'm not sure it contemplates, you know, personal issues. And, you know, this is a tough one. This is a tough one, you know, as neighbors, but at the end of the day, you know, we've got to look for what's for the better good of everybody. And I just, you know, with that, I'm going to have to make a motion to deny. And I'll let that be my motion.
I'll second.
The motion, the alternative 2 in this case. Yep, that will be alternative 2. But we have a motion by Commissioner Kiefer to deny the request, alternative 2, and second by Commissioner Deloach. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And the motion is denied. So there's no need for a second reading. sorry. It's- That will conclude all the planning board hearings we have for tonight. And then we need to circle back around and pick up. For item number 11, reports from the administrative staff and commissioners.
I've got no report, Mr. Chairman, other than to say that effective tomorrow, after tonight's vote, the dog park, our first dog park will be open. And based on the feedback that we got from an article that was posted online, I think it's going to be extremely popular. So hopefully we'll have a second one in McCall and potentially a third one in Clarence Morgan.
They stole my idea, by the way.
That's right.
Any other staff?
Just very briefly, in your boxes, if you can check your boxes before you leave, is your monthly report from EOM for January. Also in your box is an invitation for February 28th. It is for the Veterans Park birthday. So if you can grab that as well, you have a personal invitation for that. And also, just keeping your remembrances, I was informed today a former commissioner, Mr. Charles Usher, he was a commissioner from 1981 to 84. He passed. That's all I have.
Anything else from staff? The EMS world? Anything from commissioners?
I don't have anything.
Do you have any need for executive session? Okay, motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
So,
I don't have to do that.
Rich.